Hey, and welcome back to another episode. Most businesses don't fail because of bad strategy. They fail because people don't execute. Teams are not aligned, and leaders tolerate mediocrity. Our guest today, Chris Hallberg, aka the Business Sergeant, he's a former U.S. Army veteran. He's a turnaround specialist and author of the No Nonsense Guide to the Business Sergeant's Field Manual. Chris has been there, done that in both combat and the boardroom. He coaches entrepreneurs to build disciplined, high performing organizations that actually achieve their mission. Drawing from military precision and proven systems like EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System, he delivers the tough love and practical tools that turn chaos into consistent growth. As an interesting side note, he is ranked number 9 on Inc. magazine's top 50 leadership and management experts list. So, Chris, welcome to the show.
It's great to be here, Tim.
I'm really glad we're able to make this happen. So, given your background as the business sergeant, how did you take what you've learned from the military and your leadership there to what you do today?
Yeah, no one told me I couldn't bring the leadership style with me from the military to the civilian. They just said, "Oh, okay, this guy's a little different." Were you in the military? Yeah, in matter of fact, I was. So it was kind of a lesson in personal branding. When one hires the business sergeant, they're not hiring someone to lightly discuss some of their issues. They're hiring someone to come in here and identify the issues and start to execute on solving them. So I think that fired up, follow me, I'll be up front. You've seen the LinkedIn meme, boss right on top, mushing the people, then leader out in front, dragging the monolith. So I think a great leader never asks anyone to do something they're not willing to do themselves. We've heard that for eons, decades. That grandpa used to say that to me, and it's true. And I think being a boss is one thing, being a leader and having the respect, knowing that you're like, for instance, when I had my remodeling company, like I'd make sure when the sales reps were showing up at 10 a.m. for the meeting, that I was out pushing a broom around my warehouse. Like, I'm like, okay, they're going to be here in 10 minutes. Yeah, like I might have done that. Somebody else might have done that, but I always look for something to say, how can I show them that I'm grinding like they are? Right? How do I set an example? If the boss is in the back pushing a broom around the warehouse to keep things tidy, well, that means that activity is definitely not below me as one of his sales reps. So I think a lot of it is just being intentional and being committed to the process. In America, in the workforce, oftentimes you have to take the leadership position to get the next rung on the ladder, the corner office, the parking space, that comp that you desire. And the problem is a good bit of humans don't really enjoy the adult daycare that is managing other humans, right? In some cases, and other humans find it like a Rubik's Cube. You learn the algorithms and you can solve all 6 sides with enough practice. So I think like that's why we have to have subject matter experts or juniors, regulars, and seniors. And I coach that to my clients. If you have a subject matter expert, you have to find another place for them. But it doesn't necessarily have to be leading other people, because that's not something you foist upon something that is a calling that one answers.
Yeah. So you bring up a lot of good points. And I love how you said, if you have a smart person, maybe you need to find something else that you do. Because oftentimes a good doer gets promoted and then now they have no training on how to lead people. But you also mentioned the Rubik's Cube algorithm. Can you kind of expand upon, how that really works and how you approach that in your leadership style?
Yeah. So if you watch YouTube videos and practice the algorithm, I didn't know this. My oldest son, Hunter, 21, shout out to Hunter. He's a musical genius. Hunter Hallberg is where you'll find him on Spotify. He's a world-class instrumental guitarist. So music theories, right? All numbers. And he's got that kind of mind. Didn't get it from dad. Didn't even get it from mom. He just has it. So like when he was like 8 or 9 years old, you could toss him a fully scrambled Rubik's Cube. And I think like 10 or 11 seconds is his record.
Oh, wow.
And he did this competitively, but like I've never seen him take more than 20, 30 seconds. And you could scramble it for a whole day. And then he would just look at it. Okay. Then he sets it down. And then as soon as they touch it, that's when so he just goes through an algorithm that he's remembered. So it really doesn't matter kind of where you start. You just start the algorithm and then it solves all 6 sides. I can't explain it, but once you know how to lead people, right? How to manage them and all the other things that go with that, they're very different modes. When you're in leadership mode, right, you're thinking When you're in management mode, you're doing. So like you have to be able to think and do and simplify concepts into executable chunks. So that whole leadership thing is understanding, like in the military, the officers create the plan and the sergeants get the troops to execute it, right? So like I often find in my coaching assignments that the leadership team is pretty well defined. The management team's a little bit more squishy. So here's a litmus test that I coach executives. I say, okay, you're going to make some major change. You're going to communicate something substantial to the company. What are you doing with the management team? How do you communicate with them? Right with everyone else, or in advance with some back and forth? Oh no, we just tell everybody at once. I'm like, ooh, imagine you're a sergeant, a middle manager, someone who leads people but isn't an executive on team one, and you're there getting the information real time, and then your team looks at you and says, "What's going on with this?" And you're like, "I don't know. I just found out." Right there, you kind of lost your stripes, and companies don't really empower mid managers. So, as the business sergeant, obviously I coach the officers, the C suite, but I make sure to get my hands on their managers and just get a big old extension cord and plug it in the management team and the leadership team. And usually it's not plugged in. They're wondering why it doesn't work. They're trying to turn it on. I'm like, step one of tech support, is the device plugged in? And the answer is no most of the times. So that's like a great example of empowering the middle, because the sergeants spend a lot more time with the troops than the officers do.
No, absolutely. What do you find the reason for the disconnect? Because oftentimes, with my background as being military, we're pretty well linked in. We let the NCOs know ahead of time what's coming so they can then do their 7 steps in the troop leading procedures. What is that disconnect in the corporate world?
I don't know. I think they're senior privates. It's us and them, it's two classes. Whereas let's just talk about the military again, right? Being an officer, you have a way different perspective, right? You have higher, right? You have lower, and you have company grade, field grade, and general grade officers. So there's like 3 kinds. You know what I mean? So there's different things you're doing in as an officer. But at the end of the day, a story I tell people, and it's true. If you're in a unit with amazing officers and amazing NCOs, pinch yourself. That's rare to have the command team on both sides be a 10 out of 10. That's going to be a world-class experience when it's time to PCS, permanent change of station after 2 years. Like, you're going to be a little sad, especially if you go to some unit that has the opposite effect, right? But you could have mediocre officers and world-class NCOs, and that'd still be a serviceable experience if you're a soldier. If you had world-class officers and horrible NCOs, your life would suck, right? Because, again, you spend more time with the NCOs as a soldier, and that's really your direct experience. So, that's why the NCOs, when they have great officers and they really understand that dynamic you just listed, like a successful military unit has to get that, because if you don't, your OER, your NCOR is going to be trash. You're going to have turnover issues. You're going to have incidents, right? Like it's not going to be a unit people are excited to go. I mean, you could be in a battalion, Alpha Company, please send me to Alpha Company. Charlie Company, oh, what did I do? So the difference between one unit to another, even though they have the same composition, the same head count, the same structure, the quality of that commander and first sergeant or commander and sergeant major, it's a big difference. So they teach you that exhaustively in the military, Tim. They don't teach that in the civilian business world. People like me teach that in the civilian business world, and that's a valuable thing when people get that message. And let's be clear, the U.S. military is the greatest, most powerful fighting force that ever exists. Look at the Venezuela, the Maduro operation. Like, are you kidding me? Like 847 different pieces, all flawlessly executed together. One thing went wrong, the weather, someone showing up a minute late, like the whole thing would have fell apart. So that's a great example of the best of the best. SOCOM, tier 1, you know what I mean? Like the Night Stalkers, like everybody on that op was the best at what they do, bar none around. So that's my example. When you have the right mission with the right operators, the ability to collaborate between the command team and the leadership team, the management team, that's what you can do. You can pull off that kind of stuff. So when a dictator says, I'm right here, come and get me. Okay, give us 60 days. We'll come, I'm your Huckleberry. And I think that'll be the last time an enemy dictator of the U.S. cocks off on the internet and says, I'm right here. So I think like that to me is like the ultimate leadership management and team. So if we can just bring a little bit of that theory and the communication and the command and control of the military into the civilian business world, that's the stuff that I brought over. I wrote a book back in 2017 called The Business Sergeant's Field Manual, Military Grade Execution Without the Yelling and Push-Ups. So it was basically, this is the stuff that you can easily pull over. It's super helpful. Oh, and here's the stuff. Leave it right there in the military. You can't take your warehouse manager and tie him to a cannon and shoot it a couple of times. That's bad form, right? You know what I mean? Like a lot of stuff in the military needs to stay right there because you'd be in HR jail like indefinitely. But the team building, the commitment, the esprit de corps, what they call culture in the civilian business world, kind of the vibe of the tribe, that's all good in the military. People don't, join or stay in the military for the money usually, right? Like obviously generals and field grade officers do all right, but that's not the amount of sacrifice. I mean, you could work at a private equity group, right? And make more money and not have to give
Absolutely.
30 years of your life, austere environments, missing all those family events. But anyways, I stay busy because everybody wants a bit of the military. Only 7% of the population here in the States has served in some capacity. That means the other 93% either wish they did, was curious about it, or really can't argue with the success of our nation's military. And the Business Sergeant now, is a free online community where I give that training I originally created for civilians to learn about military. Turns out it works out as a great course to help transitioning and veterans that have been out for a minute to synthesize their military skills, maybe fill in some blanks with what I've learned in the last, almost 30 years of being out of uniform. And they're now picking that up. And then we're placing those veterans into veteran-friendly companies. So the business has turned in to a veteran-powered recruiting company because we got these awesome candidates, a lot of them from like special operations. And then you give them the Business Sergeants Academy. That's a pretty capable human. The government spent years and millions of dollars training project management, team building, mission planning, intelligence gathering, all the leadership and management you could want. And then we give them relevant civilian business training. That's a capable person who can learn what you do in a quarter or two. And your best leader couldn't carry our guy's rucksack for a weekend. So like that's the really neat thing about the business sergeant community is, veterans have been popular, rightfully so. And, we're having a good time placing vets into companies, and we call the halo effect. We just put like a superhuman here and just a centrifugal circles around that human: discipline, accountability, clarity, positive attitudes, figure it out. It just happens. So that's why I'm a huge proponent of the military. And I've found a way to successfully kind of leverage that and harness that in the civilian business world. And I think that's really cool for all parties included.
No, I think that's amazing what you've done and what you're doing and creating that recruiting machine as well to be able to place veterans and veteran friendly businesses. And oftentimes we talked before, whereas in the military, you don't necessarily get to choose your team, right? You're like given the team and you're like, okay, make them the best they can. You got what you got. Maybe you can fire them after a couple of months and move them somewhere else. But reality, you got what you got. And in the civilian world, it's much different. So can we talk about curating the right personalities for the right team?
Yeah, you make an excellent point, Tim. Like they issue you soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines. They don't give you, it's not like a draft. In the first round from Kentucky, private so-and-so, right? It doesn't work like that. They just alphabetically or whatever, there's a dartboard in some officer's office. You got to think it's not scientific. It's just, this is how it works. So in the military, you're signing a blank check up and to include your life for minimum. I think it's 3 years now. Maximum, I think it's 10 years if you want to be a pilot. That's expensive training. They want to have pilots for a while. In the civilian business world, somebody can walk in your office and say, Tim, I'm just not feeling it. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm not even going to be a 2 weeks notice. I'm just out, like including today. Figure it out. Right. But they're not as committed, but we get like 7 billion people to choose from. Whereas back to the military, you have this huge level of commitment, but you have to make do with what you have. So the funny thing is, I'd almost rather take a less than polished opal, a diamond, whatever, and have them really want it and get like what this is and be willing to be uncomfortable, knowing that they're green and they're seasoning and they enjoy the process. They don't want to speed it up. They want to just really be there rather than having these wildly talented people that don't give a shit. Knowing like, hey, we have everything. I'm spending the money. I've given you the tech tools. Like you have everything to be successful, but you don't want it like these other people do. I'll take less than perfect that's committed over super talented and whatever 100 times out of 100 times. Because if you think about the average civilian organization, usually like 35-40% of it is actually committed, wants to be there. The other 50-60% is completely mercenary and will leave for another $5,000-$6,000 a year. Whereas the best companies, many of my graduate best places to work award winners for, years in a row. And that's not a check you write. That's an engagement survey that says that 92% of the people at the company would take a bullet for you, kind of a thing, like best
That's
company
huge.
ever. Yeah. And, my clients have, pushing 200 of those individual awards, some of them 8 or 9, but that's because we've curated a civilian business team like an elite military unit. That's the whole point of people. People hire me as an EOS implementer. I teach EOS of the Entrepreneurial Operating System because it's a proven system. And there's a ton of acronyms in there. And military people love systems and acronyms because that's all the military is one old big old system with 842 different acronyms that you need to know. The good news is so many of those acronyms 30 years later, I still remember what they are. So it's an effective way to train things, right? Because, in a stressful situation, everyone devolves down to their lowest level of training, and that includes leadership training. And you haven't given any of your people real practical leadership training and things get stressful. That's why things fall apart as a civilian business. So we both know the way to fix that. Get yourself some business sergeants, right? Get yourself some ex-military folks sprinkled in the organization that not only have that military experience, but, the civilian business experience that's required. Or, like I said, just find some superhumans and then train them what you do. Unless you're splitting atoms or you're in the nuclear fission, neuroplasticity surgery business, that's probably not a good idea. But for 80% of the opportunities out there, an exceptional leader that's been tested for decades is going to come in here and your most stressful day isn't even a blip on the radar screen of a semi crunchy day from their first life. So that's kind of the philosophy around it. And it's all civilian friendly. It's, like I said, basically on the team building and the commitment and the management dynamics of the most successful units.
So why do you think the engagement and commitment is so low?
Well, I don't know. I could just go out on a limb and say this thing right here. If I just had to point to one thing, smartphones are definitely not making us smarter. Like I get on my smartphone and I'm dumber every time I spend, 20 minutes on it. So I think that this is a societal issue. America's got like two visions. One of them's a more traditional one is like a bunch of stuff that's really hard because it's not stated in facts or effective policy. It's just people are upset. So like without getting too political, because I'm a libertarian, I'm purple, I can go blue or red based on, what I think is good for the nation. And I actually put the country first instead of myself. And that's another thing. People are selfish jerks. Narcissistic douchebags are in the majority, not the minority. I think it's like societal issues. So what does that mean? It means the kids coming out of college today aren't as hoorah as they were 5 years ago or 10 years ago, certainly not 20 or 30 years ago. So the ability to find well-adjusted, well-raised, accountable, hardworking young people, their supply is diminishing, unfortunately. We need to turn that around. And the entitled, what are you going to do for me? My mom said I'm special and I deserve a raise. And that crowd, that's a big crowd. So the neat thing is there's, highly productive, accountable, well-adjusted people are still being produced. It's just not 50-60% of the workforce, it's 20-30%. So that's why you have to have access to people that don't believe that other way. They believe it the old way. And I would argue, 85-90% of veterans, regardless of their political affiliation, are going to have the skills. Whereas 20-30% of the general population is going to have the skills to basically lead and manage a company to greatness. So that's my observation. I don't know if that's a popular answer or if people agree, but that's kind of my quick take at it. We need to be better as citizens. And I think when that happens, then some of this normalcy will return to the workforce. But, what's going on right now is just so polarizing. The goal for my clients, I'm like, listen, the world's crazy. If your company is not crazy, people can come for 8 to 10 hours a day, and up is down, left is right, 10 is greater than 8. And we can use the universal laws of physics, gravity, Newton's laws, any of those things. That is a respite from the dumb phones, from the network news that's really not reporting, right? They're programming. So I think really getting your stuff together and just having a place where we can be ourselves, but treat people with respect and kindness. And one thing I'd say all the time is, hey, we got assume positive intent. When Jeff said that and Mary said that, then Dave got all upset. Like, I think they were both trying to help, and your ego kind of took that as a challenge. And I saw you do that in front of everyone. Knock that off. I need you to assume positive intent. You'll know when someone's intent isn't positive. And when that's the case, they'll stick out like a sore thumb, and everyone else could say, yo, bro, what are you doing? So you know what I'm saying? Like, everyone, you can't be so easily offended or assume everything that comes out of someone's mouth is an affront or a challenge to your direct line of thought or authority. So like, when you're good at what you do, in EOS, we call it GWC, get it, wanted to have the capacity. That means you're the right person. If you share our core values, that means you're there in the right seat. Right people, right seats. Geez, once you get to your company at 90% that, they'll clear out the last 10%. But my observation, Tim, is if you even have 20% that aren't the right people or in the right seats, that's enough of a foothold from the team not to get to the end zone, to continue be fourth and short and get stuffed. So I think, if we, the next one is like right people, wrong seat, that's usually management's fault. Hey, you know how to do that? Not really? Get in there. You're the best I got. And then a year later, we're wondering why so-and-so's not wildly successful. And we consider replacing them when all they were doing was helping the team out, right? Third one, wrong person, right seat. That's the brilliant jerk. These are the toughest ones to get rid of because they're productive, they're profitable, but you could never build a world-class team, or unicorns continue to chew through the fence. Even if you got unlimited Skittles, they don't like be surrounded by jackasses or other four-legged animals that'll eat wood and metal and that kind of stuff. And then lastly, we get wrong person, wrong seat. They're fairly easy to spot, but I still find them out in the wild. You know what I mean? So like, I think for all the people that lead people and own businesses listening to this podcast, of your headcount, what percent, if 9 out of 10 of them, you're pinching yourself, I can't believe they work here. They are amazing. They're committed. The customers love them. The team loves them. They're willing to be uncomfortable for the greater good of the team. This is amazing. That's usually not how most people talk about their teams when I first meet them. That's how they talk about their teams after 2 or 3 years of going through an engagement. The before picture is usually, 20, 30% carry the other, 60, 70%. Like, that's just what we see. And it doesn't have to be like that because you get to choose. So in closing on this point, Tim, a lot of people might think they're in the Army because they hang on to people that aren't good, and they somehow think that some commander has issued them this employee and they don't have a choice for 2 or 3 years. So they hang on to the wrong people for an extra 2 or 3 years. So the message is, no, it should be hard to get a job here and fairly easy to lose it. That is, I'm accurately describing any elite team, whether it's a sports team, an academic team, a military team, a business team. Usually the toughest teams to get on are the hardest teams to stay on. And I think if that's not how we're describing your culture, then perhaps you could be more intentional and curate a nucleus of people, use personality assessments and other tools to carbon copy, to find out the skills or the wiring, and then only interview people with the same wiring as your top performers. So you'll interview less, but you'll hire more. So that's what I teach my people, because after a while, just look at a balloon or a bubble. We pop a hole in the bottom and we leak out either wrong people or wrong seats until they're pretty much gone. And then we tape it back up and we're only putting in the people with the right wiring. Like, that's essentially what we do. We say who are the right people. We create values around them. We test them. We understand what it is that makes us love them so much. And then we look at the antonyms, like hardworking, lazy, committed, mercenary, kind, nice. Like, I could go on all day and just say, well, the values aren't exclusive, they're overly inclusive. So it leads me to my next point. The commander didn't say they have to be here for 3 years. Like, this person doesn't really want to be here, or they don't fit, or they have different beliefs about work and commitment and execution. And that's okay. I'm not trying to change people. I'm trying to find people that what we do is what they want. So when I find somebody that doesn't want to do something at one of my clients, I'm like, well, bless your heart. At least you figured out you don't want to be here, right? Because if you did, you'd be doing this stuff. We wouldn't be having this conversation. So it's all right. We'll get you a nice little severance, write you a letter, and help you find your unit, because this isn't it. And when you hang on to the wrong people, they suffer, the team suffers, the company suffers, and someone else suffering at some other organization who would thrive here is also going to suffer, because there's no opportunity for them to land because you hang on to the wrong people. So that's why we got to fail fast with people, right? Slow to hire, quick to fire. Those are two different chapters in the book, because that's how you build an elite team. You say what it is and you find people that want that, and you remove the people that don't want to be there for the betterance of the people that do. It's just that simple.
So what do you say to the people who are like, well, there's some myths out there that we find as facts. Like, it's hard to find people, it's hard to hire people, and it's hard to get the right talent. What do you see out there?
Yeah, I mean, if you're doing it like everyone else, I would agree with that statement. I refuse to look at it like that, though. And I won't allow my clients to look at it that way either way. Just the simple fact that your ad should be different. You should speak to the people that would thrive in your organization, and you should offend and scare away the people that you don't want. I talk about, well, this wasn't in the brochure. You ever got a vacation thing and you see this beautiful ocean and palm trees, then you get to your room and now you know why it's $100 a night. That's the dumpster, the garden view, not in the brochure. So I think when you read an ad, and let's say we're going to muck stalls for a living, we're going to remove organic waste and upcycle it into the environment, and we're going to allow equine characters to live their best life. You're shoveling shit is what you're doing. If you have a dishwasher ad and you're like hydroelectric sanitation engineer, like I see it in overselling these positions, okay? Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's a couple.
No, I got you.
There's a couple examples. So why not just tell people, like, here's a profile of David, our most successful whatever. David operates this way. Everybody looks up to, if you want to be like David or you're another David, apply. You're going to love it here. If the Davids of the world intimidate you and cause you to have self-doubt and you're offended by Davids, like, go away. Go saddle someone else's culture. We're super clear on who's cool here, and it ain't you. So I think just speak, it's a ocean view. You know what I mean? Like, I think really that's the issue is we're not honest about what we want. So we get what they want versus the curation. I use the word curated all the time, because like, if you have a art gallery or a museum with, side of the road level pieces, no one's going to, no other people are going to put their art in your place, or people are going to not feel great about the $35 and you're going to have a 2-star review. If you go to the Louvre, for instance, in Paris, like, all the cool stuff's there, and that's why it's expensive to go there. And it's a bucket list item for many people, because that museum is curated with the finest art in, all the world, especially Europe. So like, what do you got? A roadside thing? What do you got? An alligator show with 2-foot alligators? You know what I mean? Or like, you know what I mean? Are you wrestling 20-foot gators? Like, what kind of an alligator farm is this? And I think that's a good example, because they're good ones, and they're like, wow, that's a quick way to lose $20. That wasn't worth it. So I think it's being intentional and very honest, like in a open kimono kind of way. And I think the right people see that genuine, a little humor. I like to tell jokes a lot, and just, get, when people are smiling, they're like, yeah, that's funny. Yeah, I get that too. Like, I joke all the time, like, hey, there's TV shows about The Office, and none of those shows are about how great The Office is.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? None of it's about the dumb shit that happens in those environments. And that's funny unless you're actually on a team, and then it's not so funny, right? To know that, we all sit next to each other. I'm twice as productive as you. We make the same amount of money. Like, why do I care when you don't? Like, no one seems to notice. I like an organization where your contributions are measured, are shared publicly. I think if you can fail in silence, a lot of people have become pretty comfortable with that. I think if we have an environment where we rate, rank, sort, and post the results, sometimes, a client has an accountability issue or a production issue, and they're like, we don't know what to do. I said, the first thing we're going to do is just say, how many guys are on the job site? 20? Great. Let's measure their performance for a week. Let's write all 20. Let's add them all up, divide them by 20, get the average. And then wherever average is, I want you to write a dotted line and then put above average with an arrow on top and below average. And I just want you to post it. That's all I want you to do. That's it. In many cases, all we do is just put the result down. The guy walking around like he owns the place, second from the bottom. Have you seen your number? Like, ooh, shrinkage. All right. They're coming in early. They're staying late. Like, I'm going to lose my man card with that. Like, I had no idea. So, like, so many times I've changed a culture just by defining what awesome is and then measuring who's awesome and who's not, because culturally, most of the people that were difficult were on the bottom, and some of the new people that aren't given respect or are diminished because of their lack of seniority are in first, third, fourth, seventh, eighth, ninth, and 10th place. So it's like, okay, let's let the egos match the scoreboard. And that's why professional sports is a great example. I just actually watched Moneyball last night. I talk about it all the time. It was a couple of clips. I didn't watch the whole movie, but like, you should be playing Moneyball at your company, because that's really what a great scorecard is. And how do you know if you got an all-star player or just someone who goes to the gym all the time? Because they kind of look the same, but one bats 500 and the other can't hit the fastball at all.
No, absolutely. And I'm glad that you offered up that piece of advice, because it shows about practicality. And like, you offered up a really good, tangible piece of advice of kind of like how to improve a culture just by, are you above average or below average? And then publicly, let people know where they stand. I love that on how you put that out there. And I was wondering, what is like one piece of fundamental leadership advice that you absolutely disagree with?
Gosh. Yeah, if you just work hard, everything will be okay. You can work hard on the wrong stuff and get nowhere. You can work hard to try to fix a broken human. That's not like, so back to what I'm saying, like, our job isn't to fix broken humans. That's impossible. That's inner work, and it's years and maybe some plant medicine to break through your stuff. I don't know, something extreme, or 20 years of talk therapy. I don't know. But when you are able to detect and find people that have the goods and just make it attractive and just have them come right in, those people require almost no management. Like, I think that's kind of, again, the risk of being repetitive. It's that important. You can't fix broken people. That came from years of wherever they came from. People are products of their environment, the families, the thoughts, the words, the rules. Like, these are things outside of your control. So I think humans are pretty much fully baked personality wise by 15, 17 years old. Like, you are just an older, better looking of, young Tim Staten. So, right. And that being the case, that's why what I was saying before, you just have to find people that are wired like your people are. And that's by position, because every position in the company, like not unlike a sports team, has a specialist role and a role to play. So just because you're great at first base doesn't mean you're going to be an awesome shortstop. Just because you're good at sales doesn't mean you're going to be great at the detail work of finance or HR. So that's why if we have art and science, and we bring both of those to the equation, you can curate a team of position players who are all world class, and you can win the World Series in business, which is 30-40% EBITDA, best place to work award, waiting list to work here, respect, admiration, and love of your peers in your industry. Like, that's what you get when you put this all together.
That's awesome. So is there anything, Chris, that we didn't talk about that you're like, you know what, before we go, I just want to talk about this one thing?
No, I would say there's only one thing, boy. I tell you what, I think you got to have some tools, right? And you gotta have some methodology. Like if you're not on an operating system, you should really look at say EOS or one of the other ones. I don't want to be too salesy, but I'm a 12-year EOS guy, and the stuff works. I also have this software tool, Go Expand, and it's a licensed tool that brings a lot of my coaching and militaristic right person, right seat. So what I've done with that and why that's important is you have to have a tool that isn't friends with anyone. It just tells the truth. So we create like right people, right seats in a scatter plot. So what you need to have is relativity. If I'm a big fan of Tim and someone else isn't, well, I think he's the right person in the right seat. Well, I don't think he does. Well, I think he does. It's very subjective. So when I have a scatter plot of performance, x-axis left to right and y-axis up and down, right person and then right seat. So performance and alignment. So if Tim Staten is right here and someone else that they think is totally the right person in the right seat is in a lower position than you, how could that be true? See, now it's not, he doesn't laugh at my dad jokes, his dad jokes are better. There could be some jelliness there, hatred, like haters are going to hate. My point is, if we all have the same rules and we've set the matrix and we're all accountable to the same thing, how could Tim be the wrong person in the wrong seat if you think Bob Johnson is? Because I can show you with data and this plot, which is not a feeling. Tim is over here, Dave is right there, end of discussion. Either the numbers are wrong or Dave is wrong, or you know what I mean? So like, that's why I think having this methodology without like a system and then a way to track it can be dangerous and it doesn't go anywhere. So I apologize for the shameless pitch there, but whether it's that or something else, you got to have a system and you got to have a tool to see it every day, because without that level of visibility and connectivity, all this good stuff just shrinks into the background, as everyone knows.
No, absolutely. And I really love everything that you brought today, the practicality of it, the honesty of, you can't fix everybody, you can't fix broken people. You got to have good leaders. And I really love your approach of exclusivity of, it's got to be hard to get here and easy to get fired here. Love everything that you brought together today. So if you're watching this and you're listening to this and you like what Chris had to say, go in the descriptions. You're going to find the link to everything that he has available so you can reach out to him and his team and get plugged to him. So Chris, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, Tim. I really enjoyed it.
Absolutely.